Heir Apparent.
You took it from me. I wanted this.
You go ahead and talk about it.
No.
I'll bring it up. Let me lobby this one to you. No, you go for it. Alley-oop. Talk to me about Heir Apparent. Okay, rock, paper. Dang it. We have the same brain.
just take it. Just take it. You were
cool.
going.
So wait. Let me choke on my spit real quick. Heir Apparent. What is going on, gang? It's your two favorite brothers talking about our favorite game. This is Joseph. That's John. We're talking about Magic. Specifically today, we're talking about Foundations, which is the new standard set, and everything that comes along with that, but specifically, the cards you might have missed. There was a lot of spoilers. There was a lot going on, a lot of secret layer drops, MagicCon Vegas. So much was going on. You probably missed a lot of these cards, specifically from lower rarities. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. John, how you feeling about talking about that?
Well, we know since everybody missed the secret layers, so let's talk about more stuff that you missed. Hi, how's it going?
Absolutely. This is the MTG Thoughtcast. That's what you're watching right now on YouTube, listening on Spotify. We love everybody who's here. Before we dive into everything, got a little bit of upkeep to do. If you want to head down, just scroll down on the video a little bit. There's a bunch of little buttons like likes, comments, subscribes. We love all of those. You can also jump into our Discord link down below. It's where all the discussion happens. It's where the real meat and potatoes of these episodes happens. We also play a lot of Commander games. We play a lot of Magic on the Discord. If you want to come hang out with us, get direct access to me, to John, to everybody else who's hanging there, just go ahead and jump in. Totally free. We love having you there. We just did a giveaway. Just gave something away. And
did you already forget?
Well, it was the Nightmare Bundle, but we're not talking about Duskmorn anymore. The entries were just for being a part of our Discord. So if you want to know about more of those that are happening soon, dive on in. That's all of the upkeep that I can handle. So why don't we jump in and just start talking about Foundations? John, take me away. Paint the scene for me of what is Foundations.
Yeah, so we're approaching up on the new, probably at time of airing of this, that probably Foundations is probably begin to hit the store or is just on the way out very, very shortly. But we just recently, we had the actual spoiler season for it wrap up. And this is neat. Like we talked about in our last episode, the sort of like the actual foundations of kind of like what this is going to be offering to the commander table. We're not going to be diving too much into that today because we're mostly just talking about the actual cards that you can get from this. This is also caveat as well. We are not covering the jump start that comes with Foundations. That is coming later.
Be looking out for that episode too.
Yep, that is coming later, but for today is just from the main Foundations itself. But essentially, what this collection is trying to be is the new beginning, a modern interpretation of where to begin your Magic journey. Or if you like already are a established Magic player, something you can always fall back to as a decent set and collection of cards.
Yes. It's a collection of both reprints and new cards. It's basically standard Horizons. So if you think about like modern Horizons, how it was a collection of reprints and new cards injected directly into modern to just sit there for a while. This is sort of their new era of standard that they're trying to introduce, which is slightly less rotation-y, where you're going to have Foundations for presumably the future of standard, where whatever rotates, it will rotate around Foundations.
Yeah, what they've so far have said that currently their expected deadline date is 2029, but that is still also with an asterisk of
that's 5 years away for right now, which standard currently rotates every 3 years. So this will at least exist for the next 2 standard rotations. Foundations is going to be the baseline of it. It's sort of their replacement of core sets, if anybody remembers those. It's sort of their new player introduction set, but also in going through it for this episode, it's juicy. Like they kind of got me with it. I'm sort of in.
Yeah, it's super cool. They have said before about this that its idea behind it is let's make a booster product in a variety of capacity to be able to purchase, right? There's obviously the main boosters themselves, both available in regular and collector boosters. And there's starter collections, there's beginner learner kits, there's draft packs, like bundle thingies. You take it, you bring them to a draft event, not like draft boosters. I should clarify that. And like, what this is trying to establish to be like, do you want to like understand what Magic is? Like, what does this creature mean to this color? What does this ability mean to this play style, right? Like, you want to learn the fundamentals on what makes a Magic game a Magic game. This is supposedly going to be the premier place to introduce people or get a refresher course on how the game works.
Definitely. And there's been obviously a lot of very powerful rares and mythics that have been spoiled. What we love to do in these release cycles is talk about the cards that you might have missed in all of the hubbub about the exciting rares and the flashy mythics and everything. There's always juice that they put in the common and uncommon slot that just gets completely breezed over. And as Commander players especially, we love to see those. We love to see commons and uncommons that become easy to acquire and easy to throw into decks and maybe become new staples for colors and for decks that you have. So let's go ahead and dive straight in to talking about some cards that both have been reprinted and you maybe have missed in this Standard Masters set. Going straight into it, there's quite a few reprints that feel like they're straight for Commander players. So a couple of them that I wanted to mention is cards like An Offer You Can't Refuse, that is even right now sitting at $2, that's being printed as an uncommon in Foundations. This is a huge deal, especially if, actually, question for you, John. Do we know how long Foundations is going to be sitting on shelves yet? Have they announced anything about the longevity or the lifespan of Foundations? Because that impacts a lot of supply for how much these cards cost.
I did not look into that. All I know currently is just kind of what they announced about this set, that it will be available in standard play up to 2029, will be evaluated for future play later on.
Sure. Presumably, it'll be available to buy for as long as it's in standard play. That is my guess. It's a bold assumption, but what that's going to do is that's just going to increase the supply of cards like An Offer You Can't Refuse, which is an unbelievable counterspell for Commander. Like, any 1-mana counterspells that could be sitting and dealing with stuff are great, and An Offer You Can't Refuse is just one of the best of its kind because it gets any non-creature spells and at the low cost of giving somebody 2 treasures. So love having that there. Expedition Map is another one that's been reprinted in. If you have any decks that care about specific lands, if you're playing anything with Dark Depths, if you're playing anything with Gaia's Cradle, things like that you're looking for specific lands, Expedition Map is one of your best ways to tutor it because it's colorless. You can put it in any deck. You can be playing a mono blue deck that cares about Dark Depths, and you can be playing your Expedition Map to find your copy of it. So love having things like Expedition Map around. This also historically has been a $2.50, $3 card. So love things like that. We've got Garruk's Uprising in the set with its fancy new border. I'm so glad that they've switched to having the enchantment creature frame on just all enchantments.
Yeah.
It just looks lovely. All the little starry bits.
Just to backpedal you real fast, though, just because it was something that I saw, by the way. The Expedition Map is in the starter kit only. It's not in the boosters.
Nice. Well, still, it's there. It's part of the set.
Yeah, it's part of the set, but it is something that is only available in the starter collection.
Yeah. And then I was pleasantly surprised to see Imprisoned in the Moon reprinted as well.
That is in the main set.
That's in the main set. Perfect. Imprisoned in the Moon, just some really good blue removal, turning any creature or planeswalker or I guess a land into a colorless land, just permanently shutting off commanders unless somebody has land destruction or enchantment destruction is really, really good. And it's lovely to have some new copies of it, once again with a brand new beautiful frame.
Also downshifted.
Oh, it was rare before.
Yes, it was.
That's exciting. Now it's an uncommon. You can play this in Artisan Commander for any Artisan Commander enjoyers out there. Any reprints that you saw and wanted to talk about, John, before we dive into the real sauce?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously some really cool stuff at really high rarities as well. Like one of the first ones they showed with Omniscience.
Oh yeah.
I'm a big fan of Time Stop. Love me some Vampire Nighthawk, you know.
Oh yeah, Nighthawk is great.
Yeah, Doubling Seasons obviously kicking around in here. I gotta give a shout to my boy Consuming Aberration. We love seeing big abs around.
Big abs.
Big Abs is great. Progenitus, just for some reason,
for
is
real.
here.
Just some sweet commander stuff that they're injecting straight into standard.
Yeah, probably my favorite, though, that would probably be interested to talk about as far as a particular highlight for us as commander people. The main set just has Swiftfoot Boots, which is great.
Oh, easy. Love having more copies of that.
How many, like, there's always been this joke of, like, when it comes to building a commander deck, you already have your first about 10 slots already filled with staples, and Swiftfoot Boots is usually, and or Lightning Greaves, depending on your budget. That's one of those ones that kind of always is what slot in part. And so it's nice to just have it here available where you can grab it foil, non-foil. It will probably it'll be a premier uncommon, I bet, people are going to want.
The reason I love stuff like this is most stores that run Commander Night, like LGS stores that run Commander Night, I like to treat like the table time as a rental, and I pay for that rental by buying packs whenever I'm sitting in the store and playing Commander. So to have something that's fresh on the shelves that I know that even though I don't play Standard in paper, I'm going to be able to buy a pack and still be able to find some Commander staples in it that I'm going to want long term, it's just a lovely little surprise. And it's the reason why I haven't bought a ton of Standard product. Like I would always lean towards Commander Masters. I would lean towards Modern Horizons, stuff like that. That's a little more powerful. Foundations, the fact that it's going to be around for a while and has stuff like Swiftfoot Boots in it is just great. And well, I guess not Expedition Map, but even like Exsanguinate is an uncommon in these sets. So finding things like that to juice up the old decks is lovely. Question for you, John, for the table, I guess, and leave your comments below. Answer to this. I think there's a lot of people like me who play Commander but don't play Standard in paper. Is something like Foundations and all of the Commander staples that they've put into it, is it enticing you to play Standard in paper at all?
No.
Not at all.
Not for me specifically. I mean, I know this obviously varies from person to person, right? For me personally, it's very hard to have any real interest in wanting to do paper Standard because my closest shop is still closed and the next ones available don't play paper Standard. So
that's true.
It's very hard to for me, but that is obviously very different from person to person, you know?
Yeah.
Like you could live in a town where you are like, you know, you're in a city and you have a place that is one of those big like WPN premier stores that they run like full scale like Standard championship nights for those big exclusive like Texas promos they've been doing
for
lately,
sure,
you know?
Yeah, I found myself drawn at least a little bit to some of these to go, oh, this would be like neat. Especially I'll start talking about the first new card. This is one that's quite exciting to me. This is Heir Apparent.
You took it from me. I wanted this.
You go ahead and talk about it.
No.
I'll bring it up. Let me lobby this one to you. No, you go for it. Alley-oop. Talk to me about Heir Apparent. Okay, rock, paper. Dang it. We have the same brain.
just take it. Just take it. You were gone.
So let me choke on my spit real quick. Heir Apparent, and that's Hare, Hare, is 1 and a white for a 2/2 rabbit noble. When it enters, you create a number of 1/1 white rabbit creature tokens equal to the number of other creatures you control named Heir Apparent, and it has one of the greatest lines in all of Magic on it. It's a deck can have any number of cards named Heir Apparent. So this is a Relentless Rats style card that the more Heir Apparents that you play, the more tokens that you make. So the first one that you play comes in and makes 0 1/1s, and then the second one that you play makes 1 1/1, and so on and so forth. Heir Apparent seems so sick. This looks like one of the cooler of the Relentless style. If I had not just finished building Slime Against Humanity as my Relentless style deck, Heir Apparent might be the direction that I would go with it. But it seems sick. There's so many. We've talked in previous episodes about all of the power that they've been putting into matters about power 2 or less cards, and this just makes an unbelievable amount of those. Like on our Discord, quick shout out, we were talking about playing Harabella, which would be Arabella, the toy from Duskmourn that just deals damage equal to the number of creatures with power 2 or less to each opponent, like lightning helixes them for it. You just play a bunch of Hera parents so that you make just an entire board of 15, 20 creatures with power 2 or less and just swing and dome the board for a 60 life total across 3 players. Like, yeah, they seem like a really cool. You can go in a bunch of different directions with it. Did you have a different idea from Harabella, John?
No, just kind of the same idea, right? Like, and it's really cool. You mentioned about them, like the having a multiple in your deck. They fill the requirements for the cards that care about creatures that have power 2 or less. But these also have mana value 2 or less, which is also important for cards as well. You know, there's a variety of cards that either dig you out of your library or recur from your graveyard. Some say power, some say mana value. So this one's got both. So I think, like, you know, a white-black shell maybe of some kind, where it's like you ending up having a whole bunch of these thrown into your graveyard and then just like an X of 2 on something stupid like Rally the Ancestors. Now they all just come back.
If we're talking about standard, there's a card called Dewdrop Cure from Bloomborough. It's 2 and a white sorcery, gift a card, return up to 2 target creatures, each with mana value 2 or less. If the gift was promised, you instead return 3 creatures, mana value 2 or less. So if you're playing like a black-white deck, like you said, reanimating this, you play things that fill your graveyard, and then you just Dewdrop Cure, get 3 of these back. All of a sudden, you've got 2, 4, 6 1/1s that come with it as well, plus 3 2/2s.
They all enter the battlefield and they'll all see each other, which also makes them a great shell for Blink, unironically, right? Because rabbits, make them hop up and down, right? Yeah, again with a white and maybe even like blue, you know, like white and blue, blink them out, blink them in.
I would say that this is probably the least missed of them because everybody loves the Relentless style cards.
They're so cool.
So John, why don't you take us away and talk about a card that maybe was a little more underground than Heir Apparent?
Sure. How about something to be able to sacrifice all of those rabbits against your opponent, you know? Something that's going to keep them under control. Let's talk about Perforating Artist.
I had this on my list to talk about as well.
Perforating Artist is 1 black and a red for a 3/2 devil with Death Touch and Raid. Raid is a keyword ability that if you attacked with a creature at some of them say like when they enter, others are just at the end step or something like that. So abilities with Raid, you do have to read the card specifically to see when the ability goes off. In the case of Perforating Artist, this one is an end step trigger. So at the beginning of your end step, if you attacked this turn, period, doesn't have to attack with this guy, you just have to attack, which is great.
Also does not have to deal combat damage. You just have to declare the creature as an attacker.
Yep. So let me finish reading the card and we'll dive into all this. Yeah. So at the beginning of your end step, if you attacked, each opponent loses 3 life unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent of their choice or discards a card.
Yes, sir.
So as you described, yes, you do not have to connect and you do not have to attack with this guy. So I imagine a card like this slotting very, very well into any sort of red-black, you want your things attacking and maybe dying anyways, right? Like just aggro for the sake of aggro.
Oh, yeah.
You swinging in, you're either dealing direct damage or your things are dying and they're triggering effects like Morbid and Raid and Death triggers to that degree, stuff like that. And then this little friend just sits here, plays really, really well with Mayhem Devil as well, because Mayhem sees when anybody sacrifices a permanent too. So you either force them to sacrifice permanents and take life that way, or this one's also just going to be directly draining them life as well, or making them discard cards. Like now you, obviously the controller, you don't get any choice in the matter, but the fact that it hits each opponent regardless who you swung at is great, because then like normally cards like these are going to be forcing you to pick a specific player to lose life or discard cards or sacrifice non-permanents. The fact that you can go swinging at the person who's open and then it forces everybody to start diminishing down is great.
Oh, yes.
You know?
I have a now defunct Davros Dalek creator deck that this would have been perfect for, as you could stack the end step triggers to where, let's say you only had one of the Daleks, which is a 3/3 with Menace, on board and could only attack one person with it. you obviously would get in at that one person to deal the 3, but then that raid trigger would go off on the end step, and you could do that before Davros's trigger, which cares about how many opponents have lost 3 life that turn. So you could pop that raid trigger off, give them a tough decision, a villainous choice, if you will, of either taking 3 life, discarding or sacrificing, caught between a rock and a hard place, of course, and then the trigger would go off for Davros to give another villainous choice of either letting you draw a card or making them discard another card. It's just mean. Like, this is just a mean thing to do, and I love it. Nothing? That was the end?
That was, I mean, you were going, so I just thought you were just gonna.
Well, you need to tee me up for the next one.
I mean, yeah, it's cool, right? Like, you obviously you don't get the agency to be able to pick directly what your opponents have to sacrifice, but again, the fact that you make everybody do it is very, very cool.
Of course. So let's talk maybe about a protection spell, as is becoming more and more important in Commander as we go. It's like this weird stacking of the more that ward and very important creatures that are protecting themselves has come around, the worse that targeted removal has gotten, the more important that board wipes has gotten. I would say that on the whole, decks are running more board wipes now, or it's more important to, which means that it's equally as important to run a ton of protection in your decks. This card here is Divine Resilience.
Bro, we're for 3 on shared list.
Dude, it's so good. And again, everything we've talked about so far has been uncommons in this set. Obviously, like we talked about, there's a ton of spice up in the rare and mythic category, but you can't be missing out on how good some of these uncommons are. So Divine Resilience, it costs a single white. It's an instant with kicker of 2 and a white. So you either are going to be casting this for a single white, or you're going to be casting this for 2 white at instant speed. And its target creature you control gains indestructible until end of turn, which is already very good. If this spell was kicked, instead any number of target creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. So what makes this different than something like an Unbreakable Formation, right? Which is 3 mana to make all of your creatures indestructible. The flexibility of being able to cast this on turn 1 and protect something of yours, or maybe you just have the one creature that you care about and you can just cast it for a single mana and then you get mana advantage on that. But then later in the game, when someone casts Wrath of God for 2 white, you can just go Wrath of Divine Resilience. Sorry, all of my stuff is indestructible, and that's a huge blowout. So I wouldn't say that you're replacing things like Dewdrop or Dawn's
Truce.
Cure.
Dawn's Truce.
Dawn's Truce. So I wouldn't say you're replacing things like Dawn's Truce, Heroic Intervention for this, but this is a really good one to run as well because it functions as both targeted protection and full board protection. You brought this up in the Discord, actually, John, that what's cool about this as well is that you can choose any number of creatures you control. So if there's stuff that you do care about dying, you can just let it die. You can just let those go. You don't have to make those things indestructible. You can just go pick and choose what you want. So the flexibility of a card like Divine Resilience is going to just pay you dividends as games go on.
Yeah, it's also just neat in the fact that like it gets you up to a total cost paid when you do the kicker up to the same amount as stuff like Unbreakable Formation, but its actual mana value remains the same, which is important for some of those go find cheap cards out of your library cards like Micromancer or Spellseeker.
You could find this reasonably with what's the hammer? What's the Boros hammer?
Sunforger.
Yeah, you could find this with Sunforger.
Mm-hmm. Now you can't kick it. You can't kick it when you want to. Yeah, but
like Sunforger attack, your thing's indestructible.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah, we love that. That's great.
I need to build a Sunforger deck. I feel like it's such a cool strategy.
Yeah, Sunforger decks tend to always be very toolboxy anyway, so something like this is great. Yeah, exactly. Because it's just one of those, if you draw it, then fantastic. You have a board coverage-based protection spell. But if you're on the attack with your Sunforged creature, then you've got that toolbox option to remove the Sunforger and give it an instant speed indestructible.
Love it. Love it. How about... Okay, talk to me about like a creature that I'd be excited about.
Oh, you want a creature? Okay. I know you like, you're a reanimator, aren't you?
Talk to me about it.
Do you know where I'm headed? It's
one of two things.
It's 2 white and a black.
Fiendish Panda?
It's a Fiendish Panda, baby.
On my list, baby. On my list.
Let's go. 2 white and a black. It's called Fiendish Panda. It's a 3/2 bear demon, as all pandas are. When
So let's just pause there for a second. Just a quick moment to take that in. Okay, carry on.
Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So a Johnny's Pride mate, basically. Yep. Just anytime you would gain life, which is super. And then when this creature dies, return another target non-bear creature card with mana value less than or equal to this creature's power from your graveyard to the battlefield.
That's so good. Just on a death trigger.
No other restrictions on what that card needs to be. It just has to not be a bear. Mana value. Okay, fine. Mana value less than or equal to its power, which like you don't normally see. You know, these kinds of this thing dies. Think Scrap Trawler, think Kolfanor, think other things like that start when death triggers go off. They start getting mana value less than to prevent like loops. Definitely. Of some kind. The fact that this can, even without counters, die as a 3 power and immediately recur something else with 3 power, like it's a little too big brain for me to try to figure out specifically where this could go, but like there's something here with being able to have this stupid bear be the centerpiece engine of being able to die and recur something else that is of equal power to it. And this is also just completely disregarding the fact that it can get itself naturally bigger as you gain life, you know?
And you're playing in white-black, so like you're gaining life.
Exactly. And the best part about this as well, as compared to some modern Magic that we have been seeing as far as recursion spells, this is just natural straight up recursion, no finality counter in any capacity.
Yep. Neat. Yeah, that's true. There's no finality counters involved in this. They're actually throwing us a bone and letting us like make some weird loops. I really appreciate that.
All on this stupid Panda. I am a very big fan of this.
Big fan. Do you have any decks that you're going to be throwing this into?
Any ideas? I mean,
the life gain thing, you could just throw this into Loro and it gains a counter every turn.
I could. You're right. Yeah. And then like some of the lower power creatures that reside in that deck, like the Soul's Attendant and the Ledger Shredder when it's in the graveyard, things of that nature, you know? And
let this thing just get huge and then you just have recursion. If
I actually play Kermit Guide in that Aloro, so maybe I will, to be honest, right? I'm already going to be from this.
You can throw the Panda in.
Yeah, I was already from this set going to be doing Bloodthirsty Conqueror, so I might as well throw the Panda in here too. Why not?
May as well. I love it. Well, talking about Reanimator and creatures and good things, I want to talk about Dreadwing Scavenger.
We finally had a breakaway.
Really? You didn't want to talk about this one?
No. Well, because I left it for you.
Let me convince you. Okay, so it's
you don't need to convince me. I left it for you. I know. Yeah. I know you're a fan of Baleful Strix.
You left this. You went picking through the orchard and you left me a bone. You left me a low-hanging fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So Dreadwing Scavenger. It's 1 blue and a black for a 2/2 nightmare bird with flying. When it enters or attacks, you draw a card, then discard a card. I'm already in. If that's all that it said, I would already be in. It's evasive. It loots. I'm sold. It's in blue-black. But its threshold ability is this creature gets +1/+1 and has Death Touch as long as there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard. So there's obviously some weird nod to Baleful Strix. But like, man, best case scenario, it's a 3/3 with flying and Death Touch that loots on enter and attack. And all it requires you to have is 7 cards in your graveyard in blue and black. This is incredible. This feels like Standard's version of Psychic Frog, which I also, if you go back and watch our cards you missed from Modern Horizons, I correctly predicted that Psychic Frog would be ridiculous.
At least in Constructed anyway.
Yeah, totally. But it also, I mean, it just fits in absolutely everything, and this to me feels very similar. So this is my forecast for you guys, is that Dreadwing Scavenger is going to be a chase uncommon from this set because it just completely fuels Reanimator strategies. Anything like this, like if you're playing blue and black, you're probably already playing Baleful Strix anyway. That's an absolute staple. It's a 2-mana bird that just sits there and says, do not attack me. Do not attack me. Look somewhere else. And this is basically another version of it. Like you could curve out into this. You could go turn 2 Baleful Strix, turn 3 Dreadwing Scavenger. And like no one's going to be coming near you as you're just sitting there and fueling your graveyard. And then you're playing your Reanimator spells. You're playing your delve spells out of the graveyard. This just fuels absolutely everything. So I am super, super high on Dreadwing Scavenger here.
It's very cool. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how often you'll be getting the actual, like, unless you're super early in the game unopposed. I don't know how often you'll be getting that attack trigger on it, but the fact that, yeah, it does its draw discard on enter, at least, you know?
Yeah, but it's evasive. Like, by turn 4, there's going to be somebody who doesn't have anything flying. I've actually found lately, this is just a play group thing, maybe this is just a me thing. Flying has been more and more important as I've played more Commander games this year in the current era of Standard. As like creatures have gotten bigger and gummier, evasion has become way more important. So having something with flying like this, like you're gonna find somewhere to attack with it. So like by the time that it comes back around to you and attacks, you've already drawn 2 and discarded 2. The big problem with looters, even like Merfolk Looter, Looter Ilkor, these are some of my favorite cards, is that you have to wait a whole turn just to fire them off once. So having this on enter and attack is just so much value. And then if you get it to the point where it has Death Touch, you can get even more attacks in with it. Death Touch is a form of evasion. It is both defensive but also offensive. No one's going to block your Death Touch bird.
Typically speaking, yes, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Unless they also have a Dreadwing Scavenger. Then perhaps they might block it.
But to get to that Death Touch, you need to have Threshold. And how can we acquire Threshold?
Take me there.
Take you there?
Threshold me.
How about some inspiration from beyond?
Okay. I don't have this written down.
All right. Let's fill up some Threshold here. So inspiration from beyond, and you might read this. It might sound familiar for the game we played last night, but inspiration from beyond, 2 and a blue for a sorcery. Mill 3 cards, then return an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. And then it also has flashback for 5 and double blue.
Oh, I'm in. Very sold. That's a huge flashback cost.
It is a huge flashback cost, but the best part about this is that this is again, a sort of a kind of a break from modern Magic cards that we have been seeing recently. Normally, these kinds of cards that fetch you back a card of the shared type out of your graveyard, they normally exile themselves.
Oh!
Normally. There are a handful of them now that don't do that. Like what I was referencing, like we were playing a Commander game last evening, and I played a card called Relearn, which is kind of exactly like this. It's a blue sorcery that gets back an instant or sorcery from your graveyard back to your hand. The fact that this does have a failsafe on it here as well, that you get to do this again later in the game for, yes, 7 mana, but it is nice. Again, flexibility and multi-purpose of cards is a very crucial part to what makes Commander very, very good. You need every card in your deck to have purpose. It needs to be more than just a one-shot thing, unless it's hyper narrow on like what that spell or effect is trying to do.
Right.
The extra benefit on this then as well is that you can fire this off potentially into an empty graveyard and might be able to get something back out of it as well, right?
Get a counterspell, get an opt.
The fact that it mills, if you are playing a deck in any capacity that is looking to get cards into your graveyard in any way, shape, or form, you play this, you get 3 cards into your graveyard guaranteed, plus itself. This will put itself in the graveyard then now as well. So we just recently had a string of stuff that's like for Delirium and card type matters in your graveyard, things like that. And then you get a spell back out of your graveyard that was something that you played earlier that helped you fill your graveyard. Then so you get this, then that card comes back to your hand, and then you replay it, and yada yada yada. You know?
Yeah, I'm in, honestly.
Yeah,
that's very cool. I completely missed that.
Like I was talking about, find another one of these.
Perhaps you missed it as well.
Find another one of these blue sorceries that returns an instant or sorcery from your graveyard. Now you start looping those 2 cards just as is. You cast this one, feels your graveyard, gets the other spell back, cast that other recursion thing, get inspiration back, and then recast inspiration, fill your graveyard again. So you can have this engine if you have nothing better going on. You just have these things go back and forth on themselves for as much as you need it to.
Yes. Super, super in. Let me talk about one more, and maybe you can grab one more as well. Mine's super fast, and then we can wrap up here. But you know me, I'm a dirty burn player, and we got a new bolt. We got a new bolt, dude. We got a new lava spike. So Bolt Wave, it's just a single red mana. It's a sorcery. It says deal 3 damage to each opponent. I'm in. They giving me everything I want.
Yay!
Especially as, I play O'Hare Axonil, which is trying to play Burn in Commander, which is not an easy feat. Something like Bolt Wave just it immediately triggers his requirement to flip from a land back over to a creature, which just cares about non-creatures that have dealt more than 4 damage to each opponent, or 2 opponents this turn. So with O'Hare on the field, this becomes a single mana, deal 4 damage to everybody. With him as a land, it's a single mana that meets the requirement to flip him over. So this is immediately slotting in there. I'm already playing things like Flame Rift, which is just 2 mana, deal 4 damage to everybody. So this is like a direct upgrade from that to just do 3 damage to each opponent. And like, God forbid, in that deck, if somebody has some way to give themselves hexproof, I'm screwed. And Bolt Wave says each opponent. It doesn't target. I don't care if you have hexproof. You are going to take 3 damage whether you like it or not.
Yeah, even outside of O'Hare XNL, immediately what comes to mind is the cards like these are used abundantly in some of those. One that jumps to my head immediately is Neheb, the one that gives you red in your second main equal to the amount of damage. Like, this is a 1 mana spell.
9 damage from one spell.
One spell.
In a 4-player game, of course.
Yeah. I also think how these kinds of cards are shared along as well with some of those card effects that allow your instants and sorceries to have lifelink as well, right? Like Soulfire Grandmaster and
you can even buy it back too.
Fire Song and Sunspeaker, same thing. You know what I mean? Is this like you bolt again a single mana to hit all of your opponents and gain all that life back as well?
Super in.
It's great.
It's sick. It's so good.
We just had a Rakdos Valgavoth be in recently as well. Like, I know that wants to be hitting people during their turns, but also just a cheap spell like this to be able to get life lost during your turn for effects like Spectacle and stuff like that, things that want opponents to be losing life during your turn as well. This is probably the cheapest way to hit everybody.
Super good. I'm full in. Even just talking about my old my old Davros deck that cares about each opponent losing 3 damage, this would be a ridiculously easy, 1 mana, and now everybody's going to make the villainous choice with Davros out. Mm-hmm. Very sold on it. I need to rebuild that deck. Maybe I should put that deck back together. I don't need another Grixis library, John. What's wrong with me?
Let's take it home with some rats.
Let's do it.
Just because I think this is a very cool card, and it's very flavorful for some people who really love this game effect. This is called Revenge of Rats. It's 2 and double black for a sorcery. Create a tapped 1/1 black rat creature token for each creature card in your graveyard, and it has flashback for 2 and double black.
Oh yeah, baby.
This is mono black spider spawning.
Yep.
Mono black spider spawning.
Good.
Spider spawning has always been unavailable for people who've been playing mono black aristocrats, because spider spawning is a Golgari colored card, because you have to cast it for green even though its flashback cost is black.
Yep.
Or it may have green black in its flashback cost. I don't know. But the point is that like this is reminiscent more so being in a monocolor. This reminds me of Rise from the Tides, a blue spell.
The blue one that cares about instants and sorceries in the graveyard.
Yep. There's also just in general, just like mono black creatures that get themselves naturally bigger, equal to your creatures in your graveyard as well, you know? So like mono black has a very easy time of being able to put cheap, they want to die creatures into their graveyard anyway, self-mill, sacrifice, that kind of thing. So a card like this, relatively cheap, all things considered, right? Like, yes, the tokens are tapped, and yes, this is 4 mana to get going, but you know, if you've got enough of a graveyard filled with creatures, this is just like 4 mana, put 8, 9, 10 bodies on the field that, you know, they're all creatures that enter. They're all creatures that can be ready to be sacrificed. You can tap them for things, you know, tap them for mana, use them for Convoke, use them for Ashenod's Altar. God forbid if you've already got a Mirkwood Bats down already at that point as well, you know?
Right.
Like, it's cool. It's very, very cool beans. And the fact that its main cost is also the same as its flashback cost, it doesn't matter where it has been. It's either if you've cast it from your hand or cast it from your graveyard, which is also another benefit to the card as well. We have commanders that care about you casting spells from places other than your hand. as
Totally.
well. So just this is neat. It's a very useful piece to have if you are playing any kind of deck that is looking to get a big swarm of creatures down all at once, but don't want the investment for Army of the Damned. There you go. You got.
Well, let's just do some quick math here. If we just turn 1, Citrus Supplier, right? Mill 3 cards. Turn 2, Deadly Dispute. Sacrifice the Citrus Supplier, mill another 3 cards. Now you have another creature in the graveyard and you have a treasure. Turn 3, land Revenge of the Rats. Whatever it's called. Revenge of the Rats?
Yeah, Revenge of the Rats is what this spell is called, but it's a 4 mana.
I always want to say Revenge of Ravens, but that's a different card.
That is a different card.
Revenge of Rats, you now have 6 cards that you've milled, plus your Citrus Supplier. On turn 3, that's a potential, super Christmas land potential of like make 7 rats on turn 3.
Mm-hmm. Maybe more likely, more like 3 or 4, maybe.
3 or 4, but even then on turn 4, you just flash it back again. And now you've got like turn 4, you've got 8 or 9 rats on the field conservatively.
Yeah.
So cool.
This is the very obvious home for this is obviously anyone who is doing Rat Kindred specifically, but just the fact that this makes disposable creature tokens twice for you in a mono color is excellent. For sure. I'm a very big fan.
I'm considering this for my Slimefoot and Squee deck, which has slowly become token aristocrats because you have things like, what's that?
Not just Saproings.
Exactly. Well, because you have Insidious Roots now. Insidious Roots is such a good card that has made me care so much about creature tokens and it's already self-mill. I'm already putting creatures in the graveyard. I'm already trying to bring things back. Insidious Roots is just making the deck sing. So having something like Revenge of the Rats to just go, 4 mana, I'm going to make 6 or 7 rats once. Now with Insidious Roots out, that's making 7 green mana just at a will. And then flash it back later. Also, like the flashback cost is really, really good in things like a graveyard deck because if you mill this, you still have access to it. Crazy good. I'm very sold on this. I can't believe I missed that.
I'll play this.
Can you guys believe that you missed it? Let me just turn it to the listeners very quickly.
What's the foundation cards that you missed? What's the foundation cards that we missed?
Give me a quick YouTube shocked react face. There we go. There's a thumbnail. In all seriousness, to the listeners, did we miss anything that you wanted us to talk about? Did you hear anything that got you excited about foundations? Let us know in the comments down below, and especially let us know on our Discord. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you very, very soon with another episode of the MTG Thoughtcast. This is Joseph. This is John signing off. We'll see you guys next time.